My friends, we have reached the third Sunday in the ordinary time, and Pope Francis, declared this Sunday as a Word of God Sunday or Word of the Lord Sunday. Jesus is also beginning his ministry in Galilee, so we will dedicate our brief homily today on the meaning of the Word of the Lord Sunday. Why did the Pope declared this for the first time? So by way of brief outline, first we will go into the meaning of the word, capital W, the term word, and how did it evolve in history. Sometimes it's unfortunate when the power of a term is lost in translation. We will revisit the original meaning of word from the Old Testament, from Hebrew, and then how it evolved, and finally how it became translated as simple word. Then second, we will relate this to the celebration of the Mass. What is really the Mass all about? And also how history has affected the celebration of the Mass. It went through a development also from the very beginning, the first Christians, and then until now, and also history in the 16th century during the time of Luther. What did Luther do that affected our celebration of the Mass? And then finally, the reasons why Pope Francis is declaring it now, today. What is his message to the world? So, let's start. The English word for word, which is capital W. The original Hebrew term for that is called dabar. Dabar Elohim. D-A-B-A-R. Elohim, God, Elohim, Dabar Elohim. What is the meaning of Dabar? In Hebrew, it is not simply a reading from a book. Dabar means the creative action of God Himself. God Himself acting, God Himself active and creating and transforming. It is God Himself who is present whenever His actions are declared and proclaimed. It is the presence of God, active and transforming. So when His actions are proclaimed, it is like the same God in Sinai who took care of the people, saved the Israelites, the same God who provided for them. It's the same God who defended them against their enemies. And whenever these actions are proclaimed, He is the same God present now, being proclaimed. From the first row, sit here to the last. It is not just a reading from the book, but is proclaiming the infinite, powerful, eternal God who did these things in the past. He is still doing it now. He is now here and will do it again later on because He is eternal. That's the meaning of the bar. It's presence of God in our midst. So you see the power of that phrase. Then when the New Testament was written in Greek, that was about 100 years after Christianity. They were persecuted in Israel, so the Christians went out of Israel. They went to a city called Alexandria in North Africa, where the New Testament books were written in Greek. Now, the book of John, the evangelist, begins with this line: "In the beginning, the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. John was using the Greek philosophy of Gnosticism to explain the person of Jesus. It is now centered on Jesus, and the Word became Logos, Logos. What is the mind of the Greeks about the world? For the Greeks, according to Plato, there are two worlds: the abstract spirit world and the material world. When something is created, we put together the blueprint and the concrete together, like when you do construction. First, you get an architect to do blueprint, the plan, floor planning, measurements. That's the document from the architect. Then we hire a contractor to bring concrete, wood, and metal, putting these two together, the abstract and the concrete together, then you have a building. According to John, Jesus was the one through whom God created the world, is in the creed. Through him the world was made. First, he was with God, Spirit. Then he went to the world and became man. So Jesus is the Logos, is the Word of God that is responsible for creation and maintenance of the world. So from Dabar, Greek to Logos. Later on, Saint Jerome translated the Bible from Greek to Latin because the Europe cannot understand Greek. So it has to be translated in Latin in the 5th century. And then Jerome translated the word Dabar and Logos to verbum, verb, action. The creative power and the person are lost. It became now action. Verbum Domini, the word of the Lord, is weaker. And of course, English, which is a weak language, translates that into word. Everything is lost. Right? Word of the Lord. Where is the Dabar? The presence. Where is the person of the Logos? And the action, it went to word. Right? No more passion. No more original. So, it's about time when we bring this back. You know, the celebration of the proclamation of the presence of God here in our midst, acting, transforming, creating. That's the meaning of the proclamation, you know, of the Word. Now, the Mass. Let's now apply this to the Mass. You know, the Mass, the liturgy was developed by Saint Hippolytus, and then later on, blessed by Pope Saint Gregory the Great. The Mass is a celebration, I say that every time I open the Mass, of the presence of God. We celebrate the presence of God. God is here. The Mass begins the moment we leave our garage. You know, it begins the gathering. It begins already. Then we enter the church, and what do? We bow at the altar. We genuflect, bow, make sign of the cross. Because Jesus said, where 2 or 3 are gathered together, there am I in their midst. Jesus is present in our midst. Presence, altar. We genuflect, we kiss the altar. Presence. Then, recognizing this presence of Jesus, we sit down. God will speak. Dabar. Presence. God is present here, proclaiming His deeds. See the importance of that presence. The Word is presence. God talking to us. You know, the God who talked to Moses, who talked to the prophets, Jesus, who died for us, here, He is present in the sacred word. 2 readings with responsorial. And then, after that, part 2 of presence. The Eucharist. From what we have, Eucharist is exchange. We bring the gifts of bread and wine on the altar, and from above, God comes down to be present and becomes body and blood. Okay? Then the summit of worship, when God the Creator and we, in the bread and wine, we partake, we become one. That is the goal of religion, so that the Creator and creature become one. They are united. Because that is the greatest passion of man on earth, to search for our Maker. Why are we here? We are always longing for our Maker. No matter how much we deny it, there is a longing in the heart to search for our Maker. In the Eucharist, that is fulfilled. When God comes down, then our gifts, and then we eat the bread and wine. We become one. So it is presence. So the presence is now in us. God is now present in us, in our souls. And what is our mission? One time we renovated the church in my former parish, and the church was so beautiful, and we asked the 500 kids to come inside and ask them, what's your favorite part of the church? Well, some of them said, the altar is beautiful, Station of the Cross is beautiful, the saints are beautiful, but one kid raised his hand and said, my favorite part of the Mass is the exit sign. I told him, stand up, explain. And he said, it is my beautiful part because in the Mass, Jesus is now inside us. He's present in us. We step out of the door and bring Him to the streets, to our car, to our homes. We bring Him to the supermarket. We bring Him to the world. You'll be surprised with kids. That is right. We become God's presence to the world because Jesus is inside us. We transform the world because we become God's presence. So, that is the meaning. Now, what happened 15th century during the time of Luther? Challenged the church. While we are busy defending real presence in the Eucharist, Luther downgraded the Eucharist and worked on the Word. You see Protestant churches, there are no tabernacles, there are no saints. It's an auditorium with a stage, loudspeakers and microphones, and the bombastic homilies of the pastors, and music. No Eucharist. At the end, probably because you get hungry listening to the bombastic sermons, they pass crackers and grape juice. For them, it is not real presence. It's just a memorial. They downgraded the Eucharist. Work on the Word. When in the beginning, they are equal. They are equal presence. Word, Eucharist. Vatican II came. Paul VI and John the 23rd called everybody, hey, our Protestant friends, let's not fight anymore. Luther is gone. Let's revive the reality of worship. Word, Eucharist, side by side. Celebration of presence. Luther is gone. There's no reason to fight. But how we wish they will revive the present, real presence of the Eucharist, because they are working on the Word. They are equal. They are the same. But we still have the greatest gift because of real presence of Eucharist. Equal with the Word. So what is Pope Francis trying to say here? Hey, let's get together. Let's not fight. There's no reason to fight. We are all celebrating presence in the Word and in the Eucharist. Let's stop this negativity, learn to work together to make the world a better place. That's why we need to have Word of the Lord Sunday. That's the end of the homily today.